Venezuela is not an elevator pitch, it's a college major, and today we discuss.
Welcome to Venezuela Insider, the only place in Venezuela for expats, digital nomads, entrepreneurs, investors, travelers, and related internationals. For more information, venezuelainsider.com.
One of the things that I noticed since I started, Venezuela Insider, is how many people, not only abroad, but even here in Venezuela, they like to describe it as, with a phrase, a cliche phrase, or a bumper sticker, or an elevator pitch on how actually Venezuela works and what happened, of course, during that collapse, especially on 2017, and those things, a lot of buzzwords and headlines and that kind of thing. And they think they are specialists regarding the situation of Venezuela, but actually understanding Venezuela is not a bumper sticker, is not a headline, is not a elevator pitch, it's a whole college major, maybe with a PhD. The first headline, bumper sticker that people like to use, especially abroad, is that socialism, communism destroyed Venezuela. And that is not completely the case. Of course, we already know that communist and socialist policies are lackluster, to say the least, and most likely those strategies, economic and social and political strategies, are unsuccessful for the average population, to say the least. But actually, the first thing that you have to understand, this is beyond Venezuela, is that socialism, communism, and capitalism, actually, this is not a switch. This is not an on and off switch regarding that, this particular country switch of socialism, communism, and this other particular country is switch real free market capitalist. Is not the case. Because first, let's define, socialism. Here is the textbook definition. And, well, already read. The thing is that the countries, every nation has a degree of both socialism, communism, and also free market capitalism. And you have a bunch of rankings. You have the Heritage Foundation ranking of economic freedom. Also, you have the Doing Business ranking. And you have a couple of others by, big multinational corporations and organizations like the IMF and that kind of thing. And also from think tanks and also very independent sources and NGOs and that kind of thing. Okay. No economy is 100% free and 100%, government control. So basically, because let's, for the sake of the conversation, let's call socialism as, government control. That's just for the sake of the conversation. So please bear with me. No country is 100% free market anarcho-capitalist. Every country has government controls, government restrictions, bureaucracy, and so on and so on and so on. For instance, one of the things that is a failure right now in the West is migration. And why? Because migration is regulated, so socialism, yet again, by bureaucrats. Bureaucrats that have no interest, no skin on the game, and like most bureaucrats and politicians, that kind of thing, they just obey to particular short-term interests. The countries that are very restrictive regarding migration, what happens is that usually those policies are placed for the political party when they are in power regarding, the narrative that, the migrants are bad, that kind of thing. So they make impossible both legal migration. So when you don't have the ways, the channels, the highway, in order to have legal migration, hence you're going to have illegal migration, the ones that you don't like. But if you don't have a legal way in order to become a legal migrant, you hence are going to have illegal migrants. And it is what it is. And that works very much with free market capitalism, because people vote with their feet and they're gonna vote wherever they want to go. And since there's not a legal way in order to migrate, they're gonna find an illegal way in order to do so. Just food for thought. Now, regarding economics, you see that the most free economy in the world is, depending on the ranking that you see, is going to be Singapore and Switzerland. They are, kind of battling out which one is the best. And the less free economy is North Korea, and could be also just a handful of South Saharan African nations battling for the least free economy. Now, the funny thing though is that you have, let's use the most free economies, both for the sake of conversation. Let's say it's a tie between Singapore and Switzerland. Okay, I've never been in Singapore, but I've been in Switzerland. I can tell, of course, the laws regarding entrepreneurship and that kind of thing. Also, they are very business friendly. I mean, Switzerland, of course, they always have that particular regard, and they have very competitive companies. And also, let's start with the socialism in Switzerland. It's pretty much non-existent, but just for the sake of conversation, they have a monetary policy that is actually very good. The Swiss franc is actually one of the best currencies in the world. It's a hard currency. The only thing is that due to the size of Switzerland's economy compared to the rest of the world, the monetary supply of Swiss francs is not good enough in order to be the world's reserve currency. But of course, the monetary policy in Switzerland is actually quite good. But still, with some government regulations and banking, Switzerland is very popular regarding business for their banking. That has been lowering, their quality and more government intervention on the past, couple of decades. Very well, of course, they have to comply with international standards that bureaucratic, aka socialism. Very good, and the taxes are very low. So very good on Switzerland. Let's talk about Singapore. Actually battling with Switzerland with number one as the most free economy. Let's start by the fact that Switzerland is kind of a dictatorship, actually. Of that range, I mean, it's not, the land of the free and home of the brave. The economy of Switzerland, of course, is spectacular, one of the best in the world, but they have actually a bunch of regulations, a bunch of government interventions regarding their transportation, healthcare, housing, and that kind of thing. So you have, of course, that Singapore, of course, has a lot of government intervention, aka socialism. Now let's go with the worst. North Korea, let's say North Korea. North Korea, of course, a dictatorship. I mean, no one's not even going to discuss that. And of course, I'm not going to get into the human rights or their nuclear power weapons of mass destruction and anything like that. I'm not going to get into that. North Korea actually has an economy that trades with the rest of the world. Of course, North Korea has a bunch of sanctions that, yet again, government intervention, socialism, and I can understand why. But the main issue is that actually North Korea does businesses with other countries, of course, allies like China and Russia. Very good. They have tourists, by the way. I believe most of them are Chinese. But anyways, I mean, there is a quote-unquote free market on North Korea. That is the most, let's say, socialist, communist. They have a particular socio-political thing. Juno, I'm going to put it here on I don't remember right. Anyways, now let's come back again here to Venezuela. Is socialism, communism, well, it's a lot of government intervention and bureaucracy, I have to say, aka socialism. So, yeah, in that particular regard. But the main issue, and of course, a lot of political instability and that kind of thing. But the main issue is that, of course, the main thing of the Venezuelan economic collapse is how the Venezuelan economy is tied to the oil economy, and hence it's going to do as good as bad regarding the oil revenue. I explained that, the twin revenue in Venezuela, both on oil production, but also on the prices of crude oil. Why? Now, historically, and this comes previously to the current government, I'm talking the Chavismo and Maduro and even Chavez. is that historically, and I explained this many times, that when worldwide the oil prices are very, very high, and also we have a lot of oil production, so the oil production in Venezuela is efficient, talking at any particular time, historic time, and you have actually the incentive regarding, hence the government has a big oil revenue, they have the incentives in order to implement terrible economic policies regarding, of course, a lot of social spending, a lot of populism, and a lot of government intervention. But this thing didn't happen during quote unquote socialism. Of course, just the fact of government intervention is socialism, remember, for the sake of the conversation. However, this trend started on the 70s. I'm talking on the recent Venezuelan history. In the 70s, I mentioned yet again the Yom Kippur War, OPEC embargo, the crisis in the Middle East against Western nations, and the energy crisis of the 70s. So Venezuela, back then, huge oil revenue, of course, combined a great production, a very good production. The oil industry back then was very good, and also, of course, the prices of crude oil just sky high back then. And back then, the government is quote unquote, on political terms, was a right-wing government. I'm talking on political terms, not on actual economic terms. They are social democrats. Back then, the politicians in Venezuela were social democrats. And this government was very good friends with the US and Western nations and Europe and Germany, and they have a decent relationship with the other countries in Latin America and in Asia. Well, okay. So technically, on politics, they were right-wing, free market capitalists, quote unquote, quote unquote, quote unquote. But de facto, in economics, were social democrats, quote unquote, socialists. Now, that created a lot of terrible policies, a lot of protectionism for the economy. Remember, socialism, aka. And, well, of course, that created a terrible precedent that on the 80s, on the mid-80s, we had kind of an economic collapse back then that, of course, doesn't compare to the recent one, but still an economic collapse. And on the 90s, the situation was terrible. I'm talking for those standards, not today's standards. A lot of course, crime in the streets, you saw that a lot. Diminishing of the standards of living. I'm talking compared the 70s Venezuela with the 90s Venezuela. I'm talking about today. But at the end, what happens is that created a terrible precedent for future governments that when they have a big oil revenue, that increases populism, government control, government intervention, massive public spending, and that, actually doesn't end well. Now, we have to talk, of course, with the current government, the Chavismo, but actually the collapse happened during Hugo Chavez being the president between 1999 to 2013, and 2013 and on, we have Nicolas Maduro, the current president. Now, of course, during Chavez period, on the midst of the Chavez period, he made a couple of big mistakes, like first, firing a bunch of PDVSA workers on 22 during a strike on 2002, and also putting Rafael Ramirez, this gentleman here, he put him as the president of PDVSA during a decade, and of course, those are the biggest mistakes of Chavez administration. And of course, they have a bunch of others, but I'm not going to discuss that today. Anyways, afterwards, a huge spike on oil prices, the war on Iraq, and that kind of thing. And also before the collapse of the GFC in 2008, and then the commodity super cycle. So the Venezuelan government had a lot of cash flow in order to spend on social policies and populism, that kind of thing. Of course, that was bad. And after the collapse of the price of the crude oil, but also the collapse on the production of crude oil, that created mayhem for the Venezuelan economy. And also they had to, first what they did back then, the late Hugo Chavez, the last years of Hugo Chavez, and the first years of Maduro as president, what they did is basically they replaced this big oil revenue with debt, debt with China, debt with Russia, and a couple of others, also issuing their own debt that right now is actually trading on the open market, but also combine afterwards, after the debt, with money printing in order to cover fiscal spending within the country, and combined with a bunch of other things, and that created the collapse on the Venezuelan economy overall. And of course, the manifestation of that collapse happened on 2017, and that's one of the things that I want to address on this particular video, is that most people, especially on the West, they still have the picture that everything that happened on 2017, food scarcity, inflation, social unrest, and so on and so on, and of course the migration. Let's go one by one. We don't have hyperinflation since 2021. It's meaningless since 2019 when the economy was de facto dollarized. So all of these videos that you see online, especially for crypto bros, the big blocks of bills that are worthless on the street, that is all news. So please get up to date. The second thing is the scarcity. There is no food in Venezuela right now. Every store, every supermarket, every grocery place, whatever might be the case, is completely and fully shelved. We don't have scarcity. The issues are different right now because the supply chain is more difficult right now, and of course, it's more inefficient with more frictions, and hence the average products are more expensive for the average Venezuelan. But that particular scarcity that you saw on the news and you saw in the pictures, it doesn't exist today on 2024. Number 3 is social unrest. Yes, of course, you have some social unrest regarding political rallies and that kind of thing, but it's not like 2017. It was chaos back then on the streets because, of course, the protests against the government. That is not happening today. The country is way, way more safer. Donald Trump himself said that Venezuela is almost 70% more safe right now. I mean, Donald Trump said it. So at least take that. And actually, he's kind of true on that. And I put a lot of figures regarding crime rate and security on the country. And Venezuela is safer, even more safe, or just as safe as most places in Latin America. And the last thing, this is just a reader's digest about the situation in Venezuela in order to actually give you true information from the ground instead of watching all outdated information that you see on the whole social media and mainstream media and this lackluster mainstream media like CNN, BBC, Deutsche Welle, Fox News, so both sides on the aisle, and start giving, get the full picture. If you want to truly understand Venezuela, get the full picture. Just not watch these terrible news outlets and just get the snapshot that you get from those places about the country. And the last thing, of course, a lot of bad things that are, that happen, and also a lot of issues that Venezuela has to fix. We are on a positive trend since depending on who you ask, could be 2018, 2019, or 2021, but we are on a good trend indeed.
Thank you for watching Venezuela Insider. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on social media. If you want to work with us, VenezuelaInsider.com. Thanks again, and have a nice day.